intellectual godfathers of the anti-woke movement. He was dubbed as the CEO of anti-woke by the New Yorker. These movements are now popular conservative thought. Born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, he often recounts the sage advice of his father. If you're going to stand out, you may as well be outstanding. This set the course for his life. He's a nationally ranked tennis player, and he was the valedictorian of his high school. He went on to graduate summa cum laude in biology from Harvard University and received his JD from Yale Law School, all while working for a hedge fund. He started the biotech company Reavant Sciences, where he oversaw the development of 5 drugs that went on to become FDA approved. In 2022, he founded Strive, an Ohio-based asset management firm. Vivek is married to Apurva, a throat surgeon and assistant professor at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. They live in Columbus, Ohio, where they are raising their 2 fantastic sons. Please join me in welcoming my 5 kids' favorite social media influencer, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's great to be back with the biggest delegation. There was a funny part of that introduction. There's a couple funny parts about it, but thank you for that warm introduction. First of all, I'm not currently a nationally ranked tennis player at all. Having 2 kids and running for U.S. president will do something to some of those sport hobbies. But the funny thing is, you told me you received your JD from Yale Law School. The funny thing is, I actually met JD when we were classmates in Yale Law School. And we were friends and used to watch Cincinnati Bengals games together. And I could say not only do we have an outstanding vice president, but we have the proven U.S. president where we have a once-in-a-century opportunity. This doesn't come up very often. Last time this came up was with Grover Cleveland, where you have a chance to compare the track records of 2 presidents back-to-back. Americans rarely get that chance. That's what we have in this election. And I think this is a rare opportunity, speaking to California, for Donald Trump and us as a country to do what Ronald Reagan did in 1980. To win not just by a little bit, but by such a landslide that we actually do what we believed even 5 years ago was impossible, which is to unite this country. And I don't want it to be a fake national unity. I want it to be the real thing, actually. The beauty of this country is we're not going to agree on everything. We never will, we never have. Go back to our founding. Actually, you saw a lot more national division back then than you've seen even in the last 5 years. The beauty of this country is we don't have to agree on everything, but we agree on the basic rules of the road that you get to speak your mind freely as long as I get to in return without fear of violence or any government standing in your way. That is the United States of America that we know and love, and that is the United States of America that Donald Trump is going to revive this November. We are, and you can't deny this, you can't sweep this under the rug, we are in the middle of a war in this country, a war for the survival of the United States of America. But our enemy is an ideology, a toxic ideology, but an ideology nonetheless, not our fellow citizens. And I view our job as Republicans almost as the job of a liberator. Think about the parallels between Donald Trump and Abraham Lincoln. I don't say this in some sort of hyperbolic way. The Democrat-led media called him a tyrant. They called him a dictator. They called him a traitor and said he would make us a laughingstock on the global stage. They were talking about Abraham Lincoln. In 1864, shortly before an assassin put a bullet in his body, Donald Trump, I believe, has been given the chance that Abraham Lincoln, the second chance that he didn't get. And now it's up to not just Donald Trump, but all of us to step up and use that to unite this country in an authentic way. to look our kids and the next generation in the eye and say, you know what, you are hungry for a cause, but your cause is staring you right in the face right now. It is the United States of America. And I think we have two tasks ahead of us as a Republican Party and as a country in rebuilding this nation. The first is to revive our missing national identity. We have lost our sense of who we are as Americans. We are all, part of what makes us human beings rather than animals, is that we can and we have a need to believe in something bigger than ourselves. Yet today we live in a moment when the things that used to fill that void, faith in God, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared, and that leaves a vacuum that runs so deep that you start to see new poisons fill the void. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, Zelenskyism. Some may, have different views on that. I have my views. But these are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose. And I think for a long time, I'm not blaming anybody else but myself here. For a long time, we have been a party and a movement that has been running from something. I think now is our moment to start running to something. Back to our vision of what it means to be an American in the year 2024. It means we believe in the ideals of 1776, the ideals of our founding. Talked about these last night. It means we believe in meritocracy, that the best person gets the job, that you get ahead in the country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That's why we're against affirmative action and group quota systems and end the DEI regime in this country. I'm proud of California. Even in, a couple years ago, shooting down was a Prop 16, that even blue California that voted Democrat down the ballot, which I don't like, still said resoundingly, outspent 9-1, that we're against affirmative action and group quotas, that we will not allow the state to discriminate on the basis of race. Most of us in this country still share those same basic values in common. Most of us, even in California, even your neighbors who aren't in this room, who aren't yet in the Republican Party, but I hope soon will be, believe in the rule of law. Go to the streets of San Francisco from the Tenderloin all the way down to LA. You see a country that is flailing like a third world nation, partly due to that mass wave of illegal migration that's bigger than anything we've seen in our nation's history. I say this as the kid of legal immigrants. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. And if we've had the largest influx of illegals, we will have the largest mass deportation of illegals in American history. And we're not going to apologize for that, because that's what it means to stand for the rule of law. Not because every illegal immigrant is a bad person. Many of them are not. But because they broke the law. And if you break the law, you face the consequence. We're a nation founded on the rule of law. That's the first mass deportation that's going to be required to save the country, along with sealing the border. But don't forget the second mass deportation that we require. That is the mass deportation of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of Washington, D.C. That, too, is how you drain the swamp in this country. The people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government. That's not too much to ask. It's not a Democrat idea or a Republican idea. That was the founding ideal of this country. So I said the first thing we need to do is revive our national identity. That's a job for the U.S. president. And I bet on Donald Trump to do it. I believe in him to do it. But the second job is a team effort. Shutting down that fourth branch of government, both at the federal level and, let's be honest, in every one of the 50 states in this country. From your state of California to my home state of Ohio to our own federal government. That's really the class that runs the show today. The people who we never elected to those positions. The shadow government, the administrative state, the fourth branch that our founding fathers never envisioned. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a tough message here for all of us. This isn't just about the next 4 months. This is about the next 4 years and the next 250 after that. When Donald Trump gets back to the White House, we're going to have moments where we have to ask ourselves a tough question as conservatives. Do we want to replace the left-wing nanny state with a right-wing nanny state? Or do we want to actually dismantle the nanny state? I say our job is to get in there and shut it down. The same thing goes for the regulatory state. We got millions of unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., writing off regulations with the stroke of a pen that never went through Congress without zero backstop of democratic accountability. The question for us, even in the next 4 years, is going to be this. After we, in the next 4 months, get Donald Trump back in the White House, that's job number one. But are we actually prepared? Do we want to use the regulatory state and redirect it to advance conservative ends? Or do we actually want to get into that regulatory state and shut it down? That's got to be the way forward in this country. Get in there and shut it down. That's the future of how we save this republic. Are there going to be some sacrifices required? Yes, there are. We got to see that eyes wide open. I think the right answer is yes, we will get in there and shut down the U.S. Department of Education. Return the money back to the states and to the people so every parent is able to determine where they send their kids to school. Are there going to be some inconveniences? Are there some bumps in the road along the way when you're rescinding thousands of federal regulations, firing millions of bureaucrats, shutting down agencies? Of course there will be. Are we ready to make those sacrifices? Yes, I believe we are. I don't know why, because our founding fathers made a sacrifice for that same ideal 250 years ago. 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence. What happened to them? We don't often stop to ask. 12 of them had their homes ransacked and burned to the ground by the British. 5 of them were captured by the British and tortured until their deaths. 9 of them died in the Revolutionary War. 3 more of them had their own kids die in the Revolutionary War. They didn't make these sacrifices for themselves. They were what the young people today would call privileged. They were landowners. They were successful. They didn't apologize for their success, but that's what makes their sacrifice that much more admirable. They made the sacrifice so we could be here nearly 250 years later enjoying the blessings of liberty that they bequeathed upon us. I say this as a father of 2 sons myself. This nation still has another 250 years and then some still left if we're willing to step up and make that sacrifice today. And if we do, if you do, every one of you, every one of us has our own unique God-given gifts. They're not the same as everybody else. But every one of us has our own unique God-given gift. I'm asking you, when you get back home to California, look yourself in the mirror between now and November and ask yourself, how am I going to use my God-given gifts to do what is right for this country in the short time that we have left? If my kids are in high school before we get this right, I don't think we have a country left. If we don't reach the right result this November, I fear we may not have a country left. But this is our chance. I think we've been given a once-in-a-century opportunity to revive the constitutional republic that our founding fathers set into motion. And if we do, we don't have to anymore be this ancient Roman decline of a civilization that we've become. What I see in this country, and I say this myself as the youngest person who's run for U.S. president as a Republican last year, I say this as a young person. What I see is a nation, actually, that is still itself a little young, going through our own version of our adolescence, figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again, actually. You go through your adolescence, you go through your identity crisis. You lose your way a little bit. You do some stupid things. Most of us probably did. But we are stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. So I say, no, we don't have to be this nation in decline. We can still be a nation in our ascent. Not in some cheesy, fake political slogan way, but in a true way. I love and respect Ronald Reagan. I've visited his one-time home in Sacramento, taken the tour of history that comes along with that, pass that on to our kids. But I'm not going to come in here and tell you that it's morning in America right now, because it is not. I will not peddle fake optimism. It's not morning in America right now, but it can be. The American dream is not alive and well right now. It is alive and hanging on for life support, but it can be. And I believe this is our last chance, and it's going to take the sacrifices of patriots like you in this room to do it. My generation, we've been so accustomed to being taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences that we forgot all of the ways that we are really the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals. And make no mistake, I do believe our diversity as a country can be a beautiful thing. We were diverse at our founding, a divided polyglot group of people 250 years ago. Our diversity can be a beautiful thing if, and only if, there is something greater that unites us across that diversity. But without that, just think about it. What are we? We're a different looking group of two-legged higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin, walk in some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day. That's not America. It's what it looks like sometimes to me. We look at this room. I see a lot of different shades of melanin. I see different genders. 2 of them, to be precise, actually. There are 2 genders. Just get that one out of the way. We live in a moment where we have to clarify that. But so what? That diversity means something because of our creed, written on the bottom of every one of our coins. E pluribus unum. It means from many, one. At the time my parents came to this country 40 years ago, we used to talk about the United States of America as a melting pot. Now that's become a microaggression. The reality is we require a common culture in this country. That's why I believe, every high school senior who graduates from high school should have to pass the same civics test that every legal immigrant has to pass in order to become a full adult citizen of this country. I don't think that's too much to ask. You've got to have skin in the game to actually play in the game. They call that nationalism. Nationalism doesn't have to be a bad word. It is a positive force for good when the United States of America is talking about it, because our national identity is not based on an ethnicity. It is not based on a monarch. It is not based on some type of just land alone. It is based on a set of ideals infused into that land that make this place actually meaningful. It is both of those things. And if we're able to revive that national identity, to do it by putting back a government into power that has 3 branches of government rather than 4, that drains the swamp of those unelected federal bureaucrats, you'll have, I think, a revival amongst our citizens. The reason our citizens don't pledge allegiance to their country anymore is so many of our elected and unelected leaders don't actually have their primary allegiance to our own citizens. But if the people who we elect to run the government end up being the ones who actually once again run the government, and they owe their moral duty to the citizens of this country, not another one, then we're going to see a revival of civic pride back to pledging allegiance to this nation once more. That's what I see ahead in the United States of America. We're not just running from something, we're running back to that American dream. I talked about it last night, and I meant it. The country where I can look my 2 sons in the eye and mean it when I tell them. And kids know when you're lying to them. You're holding your nose when you say it. You say it and you mean it. That this is still the country where no matter who you are or where your parents came from or what your skin color is, you get ahead in the United States of America with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that, yes, you are free to speak your mind at every step of the way without the government telling you otherwise and without fear of violence. That is who we are as Americans. That is what we get if we put Donald J. Trump back in the White House this November. That is how we make America great again. And with your help, our country's best days are actually still going to be ahead of us. Do not stop fighting until we get this job done. This country's worth saving. Thank you, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God States of America. Thank you for having me. Great to see California.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
You're wonderful.
Thank you. Let me know if you help. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
On my 87th birthday at Mar-a-Lago.
Happy birthday.